Whispers of worry. Joy Thompson used to skip down the hallway to her mother every morning, her steps light with the excitement of a new school day. She was a tiny burst of sunshine, with braids that bounced as she walked and a laugh that lit up her home. But lately, her footsteps had grown heavier, her smile faint, her once cheerful voice drifting into silence. Her mother, Michelle, noticed these changes like any mother would, first with a subtle unease, then with rising concern. At breakfast, Michelle would watch as Joy pushed her cereal around with her spoon, her eyes far away. "Mom, my head hurts," Joy mumbled one morning, resting her head against the table. "Maybe just 5 more minutes in bed," Michelle suggested, stroking her daughter's forehead. Joy nodded, pulling the covers up. And soon, the 5 minutes stretched to nearly an hour. Every morning felt more challenging than the last. Joy's artwork had once decorated their refrigerator, a patchwork of bright, rainbow-colored family portraits, friendly cats, and stick figure friends, each drawing filled with the warm energy she poured into them. But now Michelle noticed darker, more frantic scribbles, lines drawn so hard that the crayon paper tore, pictures crumpled up and hidden in her backpack like secrets she didn't want anyone to see. In the evenings, even their bedtime routine had lost its joy. They used to create stories together, making up adventures about mermaids or superheroes, filling the bathroom with laughter and bubbles. Now, Joy just held her rubber duck, watching the water with empty eyes. "How was school today, sweetie?" Michelle would ask softly, hoping for a glimpse of her old, cheerful girl. But each time, Joy only shrugged, her small shoulders rising and falling without a word. At school, Joy's changes were equally noticeable. Mrs. Spencer, a nearby teacher, had mentioned to Michelle in passing how Joy no longer raised her hand during story time or played actively during recess. Instead, Joy seemed to drift, staying on the outskirts of her class, her once loud laughter replaced by quiet observation, her eyes wary. One morning, while packing Joy's lunch, Michelle felt her heart ache as she placed a sandwich and apple slices into the small container. Something was very wrong, she knew. But whenever she asked Joy, she'd only get the same soft response. "I'm fine, Mom." But Michelle sensed her daughter wasn't fine at all. One day, during recess, Joy sat alone by the swing set, watching as the other kids ran around laughing, playing tag. She wanted to join them, wanted to laugh as she once did, but a strange, heavy feeling anchored her in place. Across the playground, Lily, her best friend, noticed her sitting alone and approached. Lily had always been the kind of friend who sensed things others didn't, her heart tuned to her friend's unspoken feelings. "Are you okay?" Lily asked, sitting beside her. Joy gave her a quick nod, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But Lily wasn't convinced. She'd seen the way Joy had become quieter, retreating from their playtime, her colors fading day by day. She'd seen the tired look in her eyes, like Joy was carrying a weight too big for her small shoulders. "What's wrong?" Lily whispered, but Joy only shook her head, afraid to speak, afraid that the words she wanted to say would make things worse. She didn't want to think about Miss Abernathy, her teacher, or the cold, dismissive look in her eyes, or the things she said when no one else was listening. But Joy felt safe with Lily, and the words started to spill out, one after the other. "She doesn't like me," Joy said, her voice barely a whisper. "She says things, mean things." Her voice trembled as she told Lily about the remarks, the way Miss Abernathy would point out her messy braids or her crooked coloring in front of the class. Each comment was meant to sting, and each one chipped away at her confidence. Joy felt her friend's small hand slip into hers, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. But still, the weight of her teacher's unkind words pressed on her heart, a reminder that this wasn't a place she felt safe anymore. After recess, Miss Abernathy had them sit for story time, a time that Joy once loved. She would listen eagerly, imagining herself in the pages of every tale. But now, when she raised her hand to answer a question, Miss Abernathy would look right through her, calling on someone else, ignoring her completely. "Joy," she'd say, in that too sweet, too cold tone. "Why don't you sit quietly and listen? No need to be the center of attention." These comments made Joy's face burn, and her hand dropped each time a little more quickly. Over days, she learned not to raise it at all. Miss Abernethy seemed to take joy in these small slights, crafted to wound without leaving any visible mark. In group activities, she would pair Joy with students who ignored her or sit her desk just a little apart from the others, with casual, reasonable-sounding excuses. "It's better this way," she'd say, her smile tight. "You're less distracted." And then came the accidents. Little bumps and slips that were never quite explained. A push here, a trip there, but always Miss Abernethy's feigned innocence shone through. She would apologize dramatically in front of the other kids, but the look she gave Joy after each accident was sharp, like a warning that dared her to say anything. Joy stopped bringing her drawings to school. She didn't want them to end up in the trash, torn up and crumpled under the weight of her teacher's dismissal. She didn't want to see Miss Abernethy's tight smile, hear the condescending words that followed every attempt at creativity. But Lily saw it all. The harsh words, the carefully hidden cruelties, the unspoken hurt in Joy's eyes. She knew that Joy's laughter had become a rare sound, that her friend's bright spirit had dimmed under the teacher's calculated oppression, and Lily couldn't stand it anymore. One night, after dinner, she told her parents everything. She told them about the way Joy looked each morning, about how her teachers seemed to find fault in everything she did, and how Joy had become a shadow of herself. Her parents listened carefully, nodding as she spoke, worry etching their faces. They'd promised to help but didn't act right away, cautious of causing trouble in a prestigious school where every reputation was carefully curated. So Lily knew she had to do something. Her small heart burned with the conviction that her friend deserved to be happy, to laugh again. She didn't know all the words, didn't understand the entire problem, but she knew something had to change. She felt the weight of this truth each day, as she watched Joy grow quieter, retreating further from the Joy she once knew. And one afternoon, when Miss Abernethy's cruelty reached a peak, Lily couldn't hold back any longer. Cracks in the facade. The days continued to weigh on Joy, each one leaving a new scar, unseen but felt deeply in her heart. Michelle noticed how Joy's shoulders seemed to slump a little more every morning. Her daughter, once so eager to learn and play, now wore a heavy, invisible burden. And although Michelle had tried to speak with the school, her concerns were brushed off with polished reassurances. "Joy just needs time to adjust," the principal had told her with a soft smile. "Children go through phases, you know." But this wasn't a phase. Michelle knew that. Her daughter was changing, and not in the way that kids normally grew or matured. It was as if a shadow was cast over her, draining the brightness from her spirit. Desperation gnawed at Michelle's heart as she watched the spark that made Joy so unique slowly diminish, buried beneath the subtle cruelties Joy faced each day. At school, Miss Abernethy's tactics became increasingly overt, as if she sensed that Joy was slipping, like prey tiring from the chase. One morning, she singled Joy out in front of the class, holding up Joy's homework with a disdainful expression. "This is unacceptable," Miss Abernethy announced, her voice icy. "It looks like you didn't even try, Joy." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Joy's cheeks burned as she looked down at her hands, wishing desperately to disappear. She had spent hours working on that assignment, carefully coloring every inch of her work, checking each letter twice. But now, under the weight of her teacher's disapproving gaze, her efforts seemed meaningless. Miss Abernethy continued her lecture on effort and standards, her gaze locked on Joy, as if the entire class needed to learn a lesson from her mistakes. Lily watched from the back row, her small hands clenched into fists. She could feel the anger bubbling up inside her, something too big to understand but too strong to ignore. She knew that what was happening wasn't fair, wasn't right, and she wasn't the only one. Other kids began to notice too. They saw how Miss Abernethy never quite smiled at Joy, how she seemed to find fault in her work, no matter how much effort Joy put into it. And they began to whisper among themselves, their small voices carrying fragments of truth that only they seemed to understand. At home that night, Lily couldn't sleep. The unfairness of it all weighed heavily on her, filling her with an urgency that made her heart race. She thought about what her parents had told her, about how if someone was in trouble, it was their responsibility to help. And she knew Joy was in trouble, even if the adults couldn't see it. She thought about the hurt in Joy's eyes, the way her friend had begun to withdraw, shrinking back into herself, dimming like a light hidden under a thick, heavy blanket. The next day, Joy barely touched her lunch, pushing her sandwich around as if she could pretend it wasn't there. Lily sat beside her, watching, waiting. She wanted to reach out, to tell Joy that she wasn't alone. But the words stuck in her throat, heavy and tangled, like something too big for her small voice to carry. At recess, they sat under the old oak tree, their secret spot where the sunlight filtered through the leaves in dappled patterns, casting tiny patches of warmth on the ground. Joy picked at the grass, her fingers pulling at the green blades without thought. Lily watched her, a storm of thoughts brewing inside her mind racing to find a way to help her friend. "You know," Lily said, breaking the silence, "if something bad is happening, you can tell me. You can tell anyone, really." Joy looked up, her eyes wide and cautious. She hesitated, glancing toward the school building where Miss Abernethy was watching the playground with that cold, unyielding gaze. She wanted to tell Lily, to tell someone about the hurt she felt each day, but a part of her was afraid. Afraid of what might happen if she spoke out. Afraid that no one would believe her, that her words would disappear like smoke. I don't want to get in trouble," Joy whispered, her voice barely audible. "She says that I'm not trying hard enough, that I need to be better. Maybe I'm not good enough." Lily's heart broke a little at those words. She could see the weight of them pressing down on Joy, a weight that no child should have to carry. She shook her head, her voice fierce. "That's not true, Joy. You're amazing, and you don't have to be any better. She's just mean." Joy gave a small, sad smile, her fingers still pulling at the grass. "But she's the teacher. She's supposed to know, right?" Lily felt a fierce determination building inside her, a small flame of anger and justice that burned brighter than any fear. She didn't know how, but she knew she had to do something. She couldn't just sit by and watch her friend suffer. She reached out, placing her hand on Joy's, a small gesture of solidarity, of strength. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. "I'm here, okay?" Joy nodded, her eyes filling with tears she fought to hold back. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark of light that reminded her she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. The breaking point. As the days passed, Miss Abernethy's actions grew harsher, each one a reminder of her power over Joy. She isolated Joy further, keeping her apart from group activities, commenting on her careless work with thinly veiled disdain. The other kids began to see it clearly now, whispering among themselves, exchanging glances each time Miss Abernethy singled Joy out. One afternoon during art class, Joy sat quietly, carefully painting a picture of her family. She poured her heart into each brushstroke, letting her colors tell the story she couldn't say aloud. Her mother's bright smile, her dad's strong arms, the family dog, Oliver, all of them captured in vivid, joyful colors. For a moment, as she looked at her work, Joy felt a flicker of pride, a glimmer of the happiness she used to feel. But when Miss Abernethy approached, her expression darkened. She picked up the painting, examining it with a critical eye. "Is this supposed to be your family?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. "It's messy, Joy. You didn't stay in the lines, and the colors are all over the place. You should know better by now." She tore the painting in half, the sound of the paper ripping filling the room with a heavy silence. Joy stared in horror, her heart shattering, as she watched her family's faces disappear into pieces on the floor. "Now, maybe next time you'll put in more effort," Miss Abernethy said, her voice cold. She walked away as if nothing had happened, leaving Joy to pick up the torn fragments of her work. Joy's hand shook as she gathered the pieces, her vision blurred by tears. Her classmates watched, their faces a mix of shock and disbelief. No one dared to move, to say a word. But Lily, standing nearby, clenched her fists, her heart pounding with a mixture of anger and resolve. She couldn't take it anymore. This wasn't just unfair. It was wrong. Deep down, she knew that this had gone too far, that Miss Abernethy's cruelty was something no child should have to endure. Her heart burned with the need to protect her friend, to make things right, and she knew what she had to do. During nap time, as the other kids lay quietly on their mats and Miss Abernethy sat at her desk, Lily quietly slipped over to the classroom phone. Her small fingers shook as she dialed the number her parents had taught her, the one they said to call if she ever needed help. 911. What's your emergency? Lily took a deep breath, her voice steady, but filled with the quiet courage of a child who knew something was terribly wrong. My friend, Joy. She's being hurt by our teacher. She makes her cry every day. And today she tore up her family picture. I think someone needs to help her. The dispatcher's voice was calm, reassuring, asking Lily for details. Each question meant to gather as much information as possible. But Lily's simple words painted a picture clear enough for anyone to understand. Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed outside the school, sending a wave of confusion through the building. Teachers and students looked up, murmuring in surprise as two police officers stepped through the entrance, their expressions serious. The principal rushed forward, her polite smile wavering as she tried to understand the situation, her eyes darting nervously between the officers and the classroom. When the officers explained they were responding to a report, her face fell, her voice struggling to maintain its calm composure. In that moment, as the adults scrambled to understand what had happened, Lily stood by her friend, her hand resting on Joy's shoulder. Joy looked up at her, a mixture of confusion and gratitude in her tear-filled eyes. You're not alone, Joy, Lily whispered, her voice filled with a fierce determination. I'm here, and I'm not letting anyone hurt you ever again. Truth unveiled. The officers entered the classroom where Miss Abernethy stood, a mixture of surprise and irritation etched on her face. She'd heard the commotion in the hallway, but never expected it would end at her door. The sight of police officers entering her classroom brought a ripple of confusion through the children, who sat wide-eyed, their nap time forgotten. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each child sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. One officer knelt beside Joy, his voice gentle, his demeanor patient. Hi there, sweetheart, he said, his gaze meeting her tearful eyes. I'm Officer Mills, and I'm here to help. Would you like to tell me what's going on? Joy's lower lip trembled, her small hands clutching the torn pieces of her family portrait. She looked up at Lily, who gave her an encouraging nod, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Taking a deep breath, Joy finally spoke, her voice quivering with a mix of fear and relief. My teacher. She tore my picture, Joy managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. She says mean things, and makes me feel like I'm not good. Her eyes filled with tears as she continued, each word a release of the hurt she'd kept locked inside. She doesn't like me. She makes fun of my hair, my drawings, and she always pushes me aside. Officer Mills listened closely, nodding in understanding, his expression softening as he heard the pain in her small voice. His partner, Officer Reynolds, made notes, her face reflecting a mix of concern and determination. The pieces of Joy's story began to form a picture, each fragment painting a tale of subtle cruelty hidden behind a mask of authority. Miss Abernethy, who had been watching with growing unease, finally interjected, her voice laced with indignation. This is ridiculous, she said, forcing a smile. Children exaggerate all the time. I assure you, this is a misunderstanding. Joy has been having some behavioral issues, and I've simply been trying to guide her." But the officers weren't convinced. They could see the fear in Joy's eyes, the way her shoulders hunched as if bracing for another blow. They'd seen this before, the quiet suffering that left no visible scars, but cut deep into the spirit. And they recognized the defensive tone in Miss Abernathy's voice, her words carefully chosen to shift the blame onto the child. "Ma'am," Officer Mills said, his voice firm, "we're here because we received a report of possible mistreatment. We'll be conducting a full investigation, and we'd appreciate your cooperation." The principal arrived then, her face a blend of surprise and carefully masked alarm. She offered a polished smile, attempting to restore a sense of calm. "Is there some sort of issue?" she asked, her eyes flickering between the officers and Miss Abernathy, clearly trying to downplay the situation. The officer's expression remained steady, unyielding. "We're here due to concerns reported by one of the students. We'll need to speak with everyone involved, including the children and staff." The principal's face tightened, the veneer of professionalism cracking as she took in the seriousness of the officer's tone. She cast a quick, unreadable look toward Miss Abernathy, her expression a mix of skepticism and restrained irritation. "Of course," she said with forced composure, "we'll cooperate fully." Voices of the children. As the officers continued their investigation, other students began to speak up, their young voices trembling but brave. Encouraged by the presence of authority figures who seemed to be listening, they described incidents that painted a troubling pattern. They spoke of the times Miss Abernathy had scolded Joy in front of the class, her sharp words disguised as guidance, but laced with an unkindness that everyone could feel. She made Joy sit by herself, one child whispered, his eyes darting toward Miss Abernathy. And when Joy tried to talk, she ignored her. Another child, a shy girl with pigtails, added, "She threw away Joy's drawing once. Said it was messy. But it wasn't. It was pretty." Her small voice wavered as she spoke, but her words carried the weight of truth. The officers listened, piecing together the children's accounts. Each story added another layer to the disturbing picture of a teacher who'd hidden her cruelty behind a carefully constructed facade. What had seemed to the outside world like a dedicated educator was now revealed as a person who wielded her authority to isolate and diminish a young child. Miss Abernathy's calm demeanor began to crumble as she listened to the voices around her, each child's words stripping away her mask, exposing the truth she tried to conceal. Her frustration was evident, a flicker of fear crossing her face as she realized that her control over the narrative was slipping. When the officers finished gathering statements, they turned to the principal, who had remained silent, her expression guarded. "We'll need to review security footage and gather additional evidence," Officer Reynolds said, her voice professional but firm. "And based on what we've heard, we'll be notifying the school board of this matter." The principal's face tightened further, a hint of resentment flashing in her eyes. "Is that truly necessary?" she asked, trying to keep her tone polite. This could simply be a case of misunderstanding. But the officers remained resolute, undeterred by the principal's attempt to smooth over the situation. They knew that cases like this often went ignored or dismissed, hidden beneath layers of denial and excuses. They had no intention of letting that happen here. The revelation. As the investigation unfolded over the following days, more details came to light. Security footage from the classroom showed subtle but clear patterns in Miss Abernathy's behavior, small, seemingly insignificant actions that, taken together, painted a picture of intentional exclusion and cruelty. Footage captured her pushing Joy's artwork aside, her dismissive gestures each time Joy raised her hand, and the slight, strategic isolation of her desk, inching it further from the group tables day by day. The teacher's lounge also became a source of whispers. Other teachers, who had witnessed Miss Abernathy's behavior over the years, began to talk. Some admitted they'd noticed her special treatment of certain students, but hadn't spoken up, afraid of crossing her or jeopardizing their own jobs. Others shared stories of subtle comments and unkind looks directed at children who, like Joy, had come to fear her presence. One teacher, Mrs. Lang, approached Officer Mills quietly after one of the investigation sessions. "I always had a strange feeling about her," she confessed, her voice low, almost regretful. "But I didn't know it was this bad. She has this way of hiding it, making everything seem like the child's fault. She's careful, you see. She knows how to play the game." Mrs. Lang's words only confirmed what the officers already suspected. Miss Abernethy was no stranger to manipulation, and her years of experience had taught her how to conceal her actions under the guise of discipline and guidance. But with each new testimony, her carefully crafted illusion began to crumble, exposing a truth she could no longer deny. The investigation reached its peak when Sarah Chen, a young teaching assistant, came forward with a small battered notebook. She had kept it hidden, unsure of what to do. But now, seeing the officer's determination and the bravery of the children, she felt compelled to speak up. "I started noticing things a few months ago," she said, handing the notebook to Officer Reynolds. "Small things at first. Joy's desk always being moved, her art projects disappearing from the wall, the way Miss Abernethy spoke to her. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I wrote down everything, every incident. I thought, maybe someday it would matter." The notebook, filled with Sarah's meticulous observations, was a damning piece of evidence. Each entry recorded a small cruelty, a moment of quiet intimidation, all adding up to a chilling picture of a teacher who took pleasure in breaking a child's spirit. As Officer Reynolds read through the notebook, her expression hardened, her resolve deepening with every word. She knew this was more than a case of classroom discipline gone too far. This was a pattern of abuse that had been allowed to continue because no one had spoken up. But now, thanks to Lily's bravery and Sarah's documentation, the truth was finally coming to light. Consequences unfold. The school board held an emergency meeting, the weight of the investigation too pressing to ignore. Parents gathered outside the building, many of them shocked, others expressing outrage as they learned about the allegations. Michelle stood among them, her heart a mixture of anger and relief. For so long, she'd worried in silence, feeling helpless as she watched her daughter suffer. Now she felt a sense of justice beginning to emerge, a promise that her child's voice would finally be heard. Inside the meeting, the board members reviewed the evidence, the children's testimonies, the security footage, and Sarah's notebook. Each piece fit together like a puzzle, forming a picture that could no longer be ignored. Miss Abernethy's calm professionalism was replaced by desperation, her once cool composure unraveling as she faced the gravity of her actions. "I was simply maintaining discipline," she insisted, her voice shaky, eyes darting between the board members and the police officers. "I was following protocol. These children, Joy included, they need structure, guidance." But her words fell flat, the room heavy with disbelief. No amount of justification could erase the clear pattern of harm she'd inflicted on Joy and likely many others before her. The principal, who had once defended Miss Abernethy, now sat silent, her gaze fixed on the floor, knowing that her inaction had allowed this to happen. In the end, the board made its decision. Miss Abernethy's employment was terminated, her teaching license revoked pending a full investigation by the State Education Department. She left the school that day in silence, her reputation in tatters, her years of manipulation and cruelty finally exposed to the world. As Miss Abernethy's shadow lifted from the school, a palpable change filled the halls. The children seemed lighter, their voices filled with the laughter and joy that had once been muted. The teachers who had stayed quiet found their voices, each one vowing to be more vigilant, more protective of the children in their care. They knew they had failed Joy, but they were determined never to let it happen again. For Joy, the end of Miss Abernethy's reign brought a slow, steady healing. She began to rediscover her voice, her laughter returning little by little, like the first blooms of spring. Each day, she grew stronger, her spirit mending under the gentle guidance of new teachers who valued her, who saw her as she was, a bright, vibrant child full of potential and kindness. And as for Lily, her quiet courage had sparked a transformation that rippled beyond the walls of the school. She'd learned that even the smallest voice could make a difference, that even in the face of injustice, bravery could bring about change. A new dawn and silent battles. In the weeks following Miss Abernathy's dismissal, Joy returned to school with a cautious hope. The halls of her school, once haunted by quiet cruelties and whispered taunts, now felt lighter, as if the very walls were exhaling a long-held breath. The other children greeted her warmly, their voices filled with an understanding that hadn't been there before. They knew now, in a way only children could, that the smallest acts of kindness could help heal wounds they might never fully comprehend. Lily, as always, was by her side. But now, something in their friendship had changed, deepened. There was a trust between them that words couldn't capture, an unspoken promise that they would always look out for each other, no matter what. For Joy, Lily was more than a friend. She was a reminder that even in darkness, there were lights that couldn't be extinguished. The school was different too. New measures were put into place, changes that seemed small, but to the children, were monumental. Teachers now sat in on each other's classes regularly, exchanging insights and keeping one another accountable. New parent-teacher conferences focused not just on academic progress, but on social and emotional well-being, a shift in perspective that allowed parents to feel more engaged and involved in their children's daily lives. And there was something else, something that seemed almost magical to Joy. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe, like she could walk into her classroom without the tightness in her chest, without the urge to look over her shoulder. She felt safe, a feeling she hadn't known she missed until it returned. But healing wasn't a straight path. Joy's spirit, though resilient, was fragile, her confidence easily shaken by even the smallest reminder of the past. And while her new teacher, Miss Douglas, was warm and kind, Joy found herself hesitating to speak up in class. Memories of Miss Abernathy's icy stare, her sharp words, lingered in her mind, surfacing whenever she raised her hand. One afternoon, during art class, Joy sat quietly, her fingers hesitating over a fresh sheet of paper. Miss Douglas noticed and knelt down beside her, her voice soft. "Joy, what are you drawing today?" she asked, a gentle smile in her eyes. Joy looked down at the blank paper, her heart pounding. She wanted to draw her family, the same image she had poured herself into on that terrible day. But a voice in her head whispered doubts. I don't know," she said softly, her eyes darting away. Miss Douglas nodded, sensing the hesitation. "That's okay. Art isn't about perfection, it's about expression. There's no right or wrong way to create. Just draw what's in your heart, and it'll be beautiful." The simple words, spoken without judgment, touched something deep inside Joy. Slowly, tentatively, she picked up a crayon, her hand steadying as she began to draw. The colors flowed across the page, bright and bold, filling in the familiar figures she knew by heart. Her mother's warm smile, her father's tall frame, and their dog, Oliver, all appeared on the page. As she drew, she felt a sense of calm, a gentle release that allowed her to let go, if only a little, of the fear that had held her back. When she finished, she looked up at Miss Douglas, who was watching with a proud, gentle smile. "It's beautiful, Joy," she said, her voice soft and encouraging. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Joy's heart swelled with pride. For the first time in months, she felt the warmth of accomplishment, a glow that filled her from the inside. And as she looked at her drawing, she realized that this small act of creation, of expressing herself, was a step towards healing, a mother's vigilance. Meanwhile, at home, Michelle watched her daughter's transformation with a mixture of relief and lingering worry. She could see the light returning to Joy's eyes, the laughter that had been absent for so long slowly reemerging. But she also saw the shadows, the moments when Joy would fall silent, her gaze distant, as if lost in thoughts too heavy for a child. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Michelle took Joy's hand, squeezing it gently. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice filled with a mother's quiet strength. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? If there's ever anything that bothers you, you can tell me." Joy looked up at her mother, her eyes wide and serious. "I know, Mommy," she whispered, her small hand gripping Michelle's tightly. She hesitated, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "But sometimes, when I think about school, I get scared. What if someone else is mean like Miss Abernethy?" Michelle's heart broke at her daughter's words. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, her voice firm but gentle. "Joy, you are brave, so much braver than you know. And you have so many people who love you, who are here to protect you. No one is ever going to treat you like that again. I promise." Joy nodded, a small smile breaking through her worry. She believed her mother, trusted in her love and strength. But the fear, the memory of Miss Abernethy's cruelty, lingered, a shadow that would take time to fade. Rebuilding confidence, one step at a time. Back at school, Joy continued to take small, steady steps forward, each one a triumph in its own right. She found herself speaking up a little more each day, her voice growing stronger, her confidence slowly rebuilding. She participated in story time, her hand rising tentatively at first, then with growing assurance. Her classmates, who had once seen her as the quiet girl on the outskirts, now looked to her as a friend, an ally. They cheered her on, their support giving her the courage to keep going, to keep trying. And though the journey was slow, each victory, however small, felt monumental. One day, during recess, Joy found herself climbing onto the jungle gym, a place she had avoided for months. She used to love the jungle gym, swinging from the bars, climbing to the top, and looking out over the playground like a queen surveying her kingdom. But after Miss Abernethy's taunts and dismissive looks, she'd stopped climbing, stopped believing that she deserved to stand tall. But today was different. Today, she felt strong, supported by her friends, by her family, by the small but steady acts of kindness that had helped her begin to heal. She climbed to the top, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. And when she reached the top, she looked out over the playground, her gaze steady, her spirit unbroken. Lily, standing below, beamed up at her, clapping her hands in delight. "You did it, Joy." She cheered, her voice carrying across the playground. Other children joined in, their voices a chorus of encouragement, filling the air with a warmth that wrapped around Joy like a blanket. From that day forward, the jungle gym became a symbol of her resilience, a reminder that she could face her fears, that she could stand tall no matter what. And each time she climbed, each time she reached the top, she felt a little stronger, a little more certain of her place in the world. The community's awakening. As Joy continued to heal, her story spread throughout the community, touching hearts and sparking conversations that had long been avoided. Parents gathered at school meetings, their voices filled with a newfound determination to protect their children, to ensure that no other child would ever have to suffer as Joy had. Michelle became a quiet but powerful advocate, speaking at community events, sharing her family's journey, and urging other parents to be vigilant, to speak up when they sensed something was wrong. She knew the dangers of silence, the harm that could come from looking the other way. And she was determined to make a difference, to create a world where children like Joy could feel safe, cherished, and valued. The school board, under pressure from the community, implemented new policies to safeguard students' well-being. Teachers underwent training on recognizing and preventing bias, on creating inclusive, supportive environments that celebrated diversity. New protocols allowed for anonymous reporting, giving students, parents, and staff a safe way to raise concerns without fear of reprisal. And as these changes took root, a new culture began to flourish at the school, a culture of kindness, of accountability, of vigilance. Teachers found themselves reflecting on their own actions, their own words, striving to create classrooms where every child felt seen, heard, and respected. For Joy, these changes were a testament to the power of her resilience, a reminder that her bravery had sparked a transformation that reached far beyond herself. She didn't fully understand the impact her story had made, the ripples of change that had spread through her community. But she felt it, in the kindness of her classmates, in the warmth of her teachers, in the smiles that greeted her each morning. A celebration of healing. To celebrate the school's new beginning and Joy's remarkable resilience, the teachers organized a small art showcase, a chance for every child to display their creativity, their unique spirit. Each child contributed a piece, filling the walls with paintings, drawings, and sculptures that reflected their dreams, their hopes, their hearts. Joy's drawing, a vibrant, colorful portrait of her family, stood in the center of the display, a symbol of her journey, of the courage that had carried her through the darkest days. As she looked at her work, her heart filled with pride, a sense of accomplishment that no one could take from her. Beside her, Lily grinned, her arm wrapped around her friend's shoulders. "I told you you could do it," she whispered, her voice filled with pride. "You're amazing, Joy." Joy smiled, her heart full, her spirit soaring. For the first time, she believed it. She was strong. She was brave. And she was surrounded by a community that loved her, a community that had found its strength in her resilience, its courage in her quiet bravery. As they stood together, surrounded by the artwork of her classmates, Joy felt a peace she hadn't known in a long time. She knew there would still be hard days, moments when the past threatened to creep back in. But she also knew she was no longer alone. She had friends, family, and a school that had transformed because of her, a place where she could grow, thrive, and above all, be herself. And in that moment, Joy knew that no matter what came her way, she was ready. The ripple of resilience. The changes at Joy's school, born from her quiet bravery and Lily's unwavering friendship, began to ripple beyond the classroom walls. Parents talked at playgrounds, at cafes, at neighborhood meetings, their conversations a chorus of support, vigilance, and determination. The school was no longer just a building. It had become a community, a place where every parent felt a shared responsibility for each child's well-being. For Joy, these changes meant a new beginning. She walked the halls with a lightness in her step, her eyes bright and open, the spark of curiosity returning to her gaze. The small acts of kindness from teachers and friends that greeted her each day began to mend the scars left by Miss Abernathy's cruelty. Yet, though the wounds were healing, they hadn't completely disappeared. Some days, Joy's fears surfaced unexpectedly, triggered by the slightest things. A voice that sounded too stern, a gesture that reminded her of Miss Abernathy. Her heart would skip a beat, her confidence faltering as memories clawed their way back. But on those days, Lily was always there, her presence like a steady anchor, grounding Joy with a quiet strength. She had become more than a friend. She was a lifeline, a beacon of loyalty and love that had guided Joy through the darkest times. They shared lunches, swapped snacks, and created drawings together, bright, colorful pieces that now hung proudly on the walls of their classroom. It was their silent rebellion against the past, a statement that they would not be diminished, that their joy and creativity could not be erased. One afternoon, during recess, Joy and Lily found themselves back at the jungle gym. It had become their favorite spot, a symbol of resilience and strength. Today, however, they were not alone. A few younger kids watched them from a distance, their eyes wide with admiration. They had heard the story of how Joy had climbed to the top after everything she'd been through, and now they looked up to her as a hero, someone who had shown them that it was okay to be brave, even when you were scared. "Joy," one of the little girls called out, her voice timid but hopeful, "can you show us how to get to the top?" Joy looked at Lily, a warm smile spreading across her face. With Lily's encouragement, she turned to the younger kids, her heart swelling with pride and a newfound sense of purpose. "Sure," she said, her voice steady. "Just take it one step at a time." She helped the children climb, guiding them with gentle words and steady hands. Each child who reached the top looked out over the playground with the same awe and wonder that Joy had felt, their eyes wide with accomplishment. And with each child she helped, Joy felt herself grow stronger, her confidence rebuilding with every small victory. A mother's mission. At home, Michelle watched her daughter's transformation with gratitude and fierce pride. Joy was healing, her spirit blossoming once more, but Michelle knew that the scars of the past still lingered. She had become more vigilant, more determined than ever to protect her daughter and to help other families avoid the pain they'd endured. She attended school meetings, spoke at community events, and organized parent support groups, her voice a powerful reminder of the importance of standing up for each other. One evening, after a long day of school meetings, Michelle sat down with Joy at the kitchen table. "Joy," she began, her voice soft, "I'm so proud of you. You've been so brave, and you've helped a lot of people, even more than you know." Joy looked up from her coloring, her eyes shining. "Really?" Michelle nodded, reaching across the table to take her daughter's hand. "Yes, really. Because of you, other kids are safer. Their parents are watching out for them, asking questions, making sure they're treated kindly. You've changed things, Joy, in ways that will keep helping people for a long time." Joy's heart swelled at her mother's words, a warmth spreading through her that made her feel both proud and humbled. She hadn't thought of herself as someone who could make a difference, but now she realized that even the smallest actions, raising her hand, telling Lily her fears, had created waves that spread far beyond her own life. Michelle continued, her voice filled with the wisdom and love of a mother who had learned the hard way to be vigilant. "You know, when I was young, I faced some mean people too. I didn't tell anyone back then because I didn't think anyone would believe me. But you had the courage to speak up. And because of that, you've made the world a better place." Joy squeezed her mother's hand, her heart full of gratitude. She hadn't known about her mother's struggles, the silent battles she had fought and won. And in that moment, Joy realized that she was not just part of her mother's story. She was continuing it, carrying forward the lessons of resilience and kindness that her mother had taught her. A school transformed. The changes at the school became more visible as the months passed. The teachers underwent regular training sessions, learning about inclusive teaching practices and ways to foster empathy and understanding in their classrooms. New protocols ensured that every student's voice was heard, that no one would be overlooked or ignored. One of the most impactful changes was the addition of an annual Kindness Week, a celebration of compassion, friendship, and respect. During Kindness Week, students participated in activities designed to build empathy and understanding. They shared stories, wrote letters of appreciation to one another, and engaged in projects that allowed them to see the world from different perspectives. Joy became a quiet leader during these events, her experiences giving her a unique understanding of what it meant to be kind, to stand up for others. She shared her story in small ways, not for attention, but to help others feel seen, to show them that they were not alone. Her classmates looked up to her, her courage inspiring them to be kinder, braver, and more compassionate. At the end of Kindness Week, the school hosted an assembly where students shared what they had learned, their voices filled with hope and pride. Joy stood on the stage, her hands shaking slightly as she looked out at the sea of faces, each one a reminder of the journey she had taken. "I used to be scared to come to school," she said softly, her voice carrying across the auditorium. "But I learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do what's right, even when you are. And I'm not alone. I have friends, family, and teachers who care about me. And because of that, I know I'll be okay." The applause that followed was thunderous, a powerful testament to the impact Joy had made, to the strength she had shown. For the first time, she felt fully accepted, not just by her friends and teachers, but by herself. She knew now that her voice mattered, that her actions, however small, could create change, a lasting legacy. As Joy's stories spread beyond the school, other communities took notice. News outlets covered the school's transformation, highlighting the changes that had been implemented and the impact they had made. Other schools began adopting similar policies, creating safe spaces for students to speak up, to feel valued, and to be heard. Parents from neighboring towns reached out to Michelle, sharing their own stories, their own fears. She became a source of guidance and strength for families who had experienced similar struggles, offering them the support she had once wished she'd had. Her dedication and resilience became a beacon of hope for others, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, love and courage could create lasting change. One afternoon, as Michelle and Joy walked home together, Joy looked up at her mother, her face filled with a quiet wisdom beyond her years. "Mommy," she said, her voice soft but steady, "do you think I can help other kids too?" Michelle smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Yes, sweetheart, I think you already have. And I know that whatever you choose to do, you'll make a difference." They walked in silence for a moment, the sunlight filtering through the trees, casting gentle shadows on the sidewalk. Joy felt a sense of peace, a feeling of belonging that filled her with gratitude. She knew there would still be challenges, moments when the shadows of the past might resurface, but she also knew that she was not alone, that she was surrounded by people who loved her, who believed in her. As they reached their front door, Joy turned to her mother, a small smile playing on her lips. "I think I want to help people like you do. I want to make sure no one feels alone, the way I did." Michelle hugged her daughter tightly, her heart filled with love and pride. "You already have, Joy. And I know you'll continue to do amazing things, because you're brave and you're kind, and the world needs more people like you." Moving forward, with each passing day, Joy continued to grow, her confidence blossoming, her spirit brightening. She found joy in the small moments, the simple acts of kindness that defined her days. She knew her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she was strong enough to face whatever came her way. Her story, once one of pain and fear, had become a story of resilience, of courage, and of love. And as she walked through the halls of her school, surrounded by friends, teachers, and a community that had been transformed by her bravery, she felt a profound sense of purpose. She knew that her life would be filled with challenges and triumphs, with moments of doubt and courage. But she also knew that she had the power to create change, to inspire others, and to leave a legacy of kindness, strength, and resilience. And as she took each step forward, her heart filled with hope and gratitude. She knew that her story was only just beginning, a legacy of courage. As the school year progressed, Joy's story continued to ripple through her community, her quiet resilience inspiring others in ways she could never have anticipated. Her bravery had left an indelible mark, transforming her school, her family, and even her small town. The changes were subtle at first: a new smile from a neighbor, an encouraging word from a teacher, an extra helping hand extended in the hallways. But they grew, weaving into the very fabric of the community. But Joy's impact didn't stop there. News of her courage and the school's transformation caught the attention of people beyond her town. Other schools reached out to learn how they could implement similar policies, curious about the success of programs like Kindness Week and anonymous reporting systems. Parents, teachers, and community leaders across the state gathered at events to hear about Joy's story, her mother's advocacy, and the power of small actions in creating lasting change. One crisp autumn morning, Joy stood outside her school, now bustling with children eager to start the day. She held a stack of colorful flyers in her hand, each one a small message of encouragement for her classmates. This was her new project, the Kindness Initiative, a weekly campaign she and Lily had started, where students could share messages of support, friendship, and kindness. Together, they'd write down words of encouragement or acts of kindness they'd observed, posting them on a designated board in the school's main hallway. Joy posted the first message of the day, her handwriting bold and clear. "You are stronger than you know, and you are never alone." She looked back, catching sight of Lily beaming with pride beside her, holding a handful of her own notes. The kindness initiative became a cherished tradition at the school, one that allowed students to see themselves reflected in positive words, to know that they were valued. For many children, it became a source of comfort, a reminder that they were part of something bigger, a community that cared, a family's mission. At home, Michelle continued her mission, her role evolving from a concerned mother into a community advocate. She was invited to speak at parent-teacher meetings, school board gatherings, and local organizations, sharing her family's story and the lessons they'd learned. She recounted the importance of vigilance, the power of standing up for one's child, and the strength that could be found in community support. One evening, as Michelle prepared for an upcoming town hall meeting, Joy approached her, holding a small, handmade card. "Mom," she said, her voice soft but steady, "I want to go with you tomorrow. I want to help." Michelle looked down at her daughter, her heart swelling with pride. Joy's eyes were bright with determination, the quiet resilience that had carried her through the hardest times now shaping her into a young leader. Michelle knelt, taking Joy's hands in her own. "Of course, sweetheart. I'd be honored to have you by my side." The town hall was packed the following evening, the seats filled with parents, teachers, students, and local community members. Joy and Michelle stood together on the stage, a mother and daughter who had faced darkness and come out stronger, bonded by love and a shared purpose. When it was Joy's turn to speak, she took a deep breath, her hands steady as she looked out at the audience. She shared her story, her words honest and raw, recounting the fear and pain she'd felt, the isolation she'd endured. But then she spoke of Lily's friendship, her mother's support, and the love that had helped her heal. "And I want everyone to know," she said, her voice growing stronger, "that even if you feel alone, you don't have to be. There are people who will listen, who will help. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to speak up." The applause that followed was overwhelming, a standing ovation that brought tears to Michelle's eyes. Joy's words had touched something deep within each person in the room, a reminder of the power of truth, of courage, of community. An unexpected opportunity. Joy's impact continued to spread, and soon, her story reached the ears of a local organization focused on children's advocacy and educational reform. They were moved by her bravery and impressed by the changes her school had made in response. They reached out to Michelle, inviting Joy to be a part of their youth council, a group of young leaders who spoke on behalf of children's rights, who advocated for policies that protected and uplifted students. When Michelle told Joy about the invitation, Joy's eyes widened with a mix of surprise and excitement. She hadn't imagined that her story could reach so far, that her voice could continue to make a difference beyond her school. With a shy but eager nod, she accepted, ready to embark on a new journey, one that would allow her to help others in a way she'd never dreamed possible. The council meetings were held once a month, each gathering filled with young voices sharing their experiences, their ideas, their hopes for a better world. Joy felt a deep sense of belonging as she listened to other children tell stories of their own struggles, their own triumphs. Some had faced bullying, others had struggled with loneliness or anxiety, but they all shared a common goal: to create a world where every child felt safe, valued, and heard. Over time, Joy became more comfortable speaking up, sharing her insights, offering ideas for ways to support children who felt alone or overlooked. She suggested programs like the Kindness Initiative, art showcases, and anonymous support channels that could be implemented in schools statewide. Her ideas were met with enthusiasm, her voice respected, and valued by both her peers and the adults on the council. Through her work with the council, Joy learned that her story was part of something bigger, a movement that reached beyond her town, touching the lives of children across the region. And with each meeting, her confidence grew, her sense of purpose deepening as she realized the impact of her words, her actions. A friend's gift. One evening, as Joy sat at her desk, working on ideas for the next council meeting, she heard a knock at her window. She looked up to see Lily grinning at her from outside, holding something wrapped in colorful paper. She opened the window, laughing as Lily climbed through, a bundle of excitement and energy. "Here," Lily said, handing her the gift. "I made something for you." Joy unwrapped the paper, her heart warming as she saw what lay inside. A scrapbook filled with memories, moments that captured their friendship, their journey. There were photos of them at the jungle gym, drawings they'd made together, even a page dedicated to the kindness initiative, with notes of encouragement they'd written for each other. Lily had written a small note on the last page, her handwriting carefully looped and clear. "Thank you for being my friend, for being brave, and for teaching me what it means to be kind. No matter what, we'll always be there for each other. Love, Lily." Joy felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude. She hugged Lily, words failing her as she held her friend close. They had come so far together, their friendship a testament to the power of loyalty, of love. And in that moment, Joy knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would never have to face them alone. A lasting impact. As Joy's story continued to spread, other schools began to adopt the programs she had championed, implementing kindness initiatives, support groups, and policies that encouraged inclusivity and empathy. Teachers and administrators shared her story in classrooms, using it as a lesson in resilience, in the importance of standing up for oneself and others. Years passed, and Joy's legacy grew, her story inspiring countless children to find their voices, to believe in themselves. She continued her work with the Children's Advocacy Council, her influence expanding as she became a powerful voice for children's rights and education reform. Her work led to policy changes that protected children from discrimination, ensuring that every school in her district was a safe and supportive environment for all students. And though Joy had become a respected advocate, her heart remained close to home, grounded in the friendships and love that had carried her through the darkest times. She visited her school often, sharing her experiences with younger students, encouraging them to believe in themselves, to know that they were never alone. A moment of reflection. One afternoon, as she walked through the familiar halls of her school, now filled with the laughter and joy of new students, Joy paused outside the jungle gym, her heart filled with a quiet gratitude. She thought back to that first day when she climbed to the top, the day she'd realized that she was stronger than she knew. A small voice interrupted her thoughts, and she turned to see a little girl standing beside her, looking up with wide, curious eyes. "Are you Joy?" the girl asked, her voice filled with awe. Joy knelt down, smiling warmly. "Yes, I am. What's your name?" The girl smiled shyly. "My name's Emma. I heard that you were really brave." Joy's heart swelled, her smile growing. She took Emma's hand, a gentle reminder of the journey she had taken, the strength she had found. "You know," she said softly, "you can be brave too. Sometimes being brave means being kind, being a good friend, and standing up for what's right. And I think you're going to be amazing." Emma's eyes lit up, her small face breaking into a bright smile. She squeezed Joy's hand, her voice filled with excitement. "I want to be like you when I grow up." As Joy watched Emma run off to join her friends, she felt a deep, abiding peace, a sense of fulfillment that filled her with hope. She had turned her pain into purpose, her story into a beacon of hope. And as she stood there, watching the children laugh and play, she knew that her journey had only just begun, that her life's work would be a legacy of courage, kindness, and love. In that moment, Joy understood that she was not just a survivor. She was a leader, a change-maker, a force for good. And with her family, her friends, and her community beside her, she knew that there was nothing she couldn't achieve. As she walked home that day, her heart full, Joy looked up at the sky, a quiet smile on her lips. She knew that her story would continue to inspire, to uplift, to change lives. And she knew that wherever her journey took her, she would carry with her the love and courage that had made her who she was. She was Joy, and she was unstoppable.